Kelly Fox moved through the streets of New Orleans like she owned the concrete beneath her designer heels. As the CEO of Fox Incorporations, her life was a blur of multi-million-dollar acquisitions and high-stakes meetings. She was currently 12 minutes late for the most important merger of the quarter, barking orders at her assistant through her AirPods, a scalding latte in one hand and her ego in the other. She never saw the obstacle coming. Or rather, she chose not to see it. Right in the heart of the French Quarter, she collided head-on with a wooden popcorn cart. The impact was spectacular. Her latte painted the air, popcorn exploded like confetti, and her $3,000 silk blazer was instantly transformed into an abstract mess of butter and salted caramel. What on earth? Kelly gasped, looking down at the ruin of her outfit. From behind the cart, a man appeared. Lewis Dawson had the kind of calm, southern smile that was designed to infuriate someone like Kelly. He held a paper bag like a shield, looking entirely too relaxed for someone who had just ruined a millionaire's morning. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked. His voice was steady, carrying that effortless Louisiana charm. Kelly gestured wildly at her chest. "Am I all right? Look at me. You just destroyed a custom-made suit." Lewis just chuckled. "Well, looks like you got a free extra layer of caramel. Usually, I charge $2 for that." Kelly felt a vein throbbing in her forehead. She didn't have time for jokes, and she certainly didn't have time for a street vendor with a poverty-level sense of humor. "Do you have any idea how much this costs?" she hissed. Lewis tilted his head, pretending to inspect the damage. "I'd guess it cost a small fortune. But technically, you were the one walking and texting without looking where you were going. That's a safety hazard, you know." Kelly was stunned. Nobody spoke to her that way. "Listen here, Popcorn Man. The name is Lewis," he interrupted. "I didn't ask for your name," she snapped. "I know, but I'm giving it for free, just like the popcorn you're currently wearing." He pointed to her shoulder, where a large kernel had nested in her hair. Kelly plucked it out with 2 fingers as if it were radioactive waste. "You're going to pay for the dry cleaning bill." Lewis just winked. "Sure. Send the invoice to Lewis's popcorn cart at Jackson Square. Good luck finding the mailbox." Furious, Kelly turned to leave, tossing one last insult over her shoulder about how people like him were the reason the city struggled to progress. She marched away, leaving a trail of crumbs behind her, completely oblivious to the fact that the man she just belittled was about to become the center of her entire universe. An hour later, Kelly was back in her glass-walled sanctuary on the top floor of Fox Incorporations, looking out over the Mississippi River. She had swapped her ruined blazer for a spare, but her temper was still simmering. Her assistant, Peter, walked in with a look of pure dread. "Ms. Fox, we have a problem with the Garden District acquisition. The owner of the final lot, the piece we need for the skyscraper, is refusing to sell." "Triple the offer," Kelly said without looking up. "We already did, ma'am. We offered double the market value, and he just said, no." Kelly slammed her folder shut. "Who is this person? Some activist looking for a payday?" Peter swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. He's a street vendor. He sells popcorn in the French Quarter. His family has owned that land for 3 generations, and he says the history isn't for sale." The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. "A popcorn vendor?" Kelly asked, a cold shiver running down her spine. "Show me his file." Peter slid a document across the desk. Kelly looked down, and there he was. Lewis Dawson. The same infuriating smile, the same calm eyes. The man she had just called a nobody was the only person standing between her and the biggest deal of her career. As she stared at his photo, her left eye began to twitch, exactly like he said it would. "Schedule a meeting," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and realization. The game had changed, and for the first time in her life, Kelly Fox wasn't the one holding all the cards. Down by the Mississippi, the water flowed lazily, oblivious to the storm brewing in Kelly Fox's life. The billionaire CEO sat in her office, still picking bits of buttered popcorn out of her hair. Lewis Dawson, the man who had just become the biggest roadblock of her career, was currently miles away, closing up his cart as a jazz band played in the distance. He thought she was just another stressed-out tourist. He had no idea their lives were about to collide again, and this time, the crash would be much bigger than a spilled snack. Kelly spent the entire night staring at Lewis's file. By morning, she found herself standing in front of a charming, weather-beaten house in a leafy neighborhood, a far cry from the glass skyscrapers she called home. She adjusted her blazer, took a deep breath, and reached for the doorbell. But before she could knock, a massive thud echoed from inside, followed by another. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and Kelly was hit squarely in the face by a flying piece of popcorn. Apparently, the universe wasn't done playing games with her just yet. "Come in, come in. You must be the intern from social services." Before Kelly could even open her mouth, Lewis Dawson grabbed her arm and pulled her inside. The man was a walking disaster. He was covered in popcorn from head to toe. It was in his hair, on his shirt, and in places Kelly didn't want to think about. "Don't mind the chaos," he panted. "We had a minor, scientific incident." An understatement. The living room looked like a blizzard of corn had exploded. It was on the couch, the curtains, and spinning off the ceiling fan. In the center of the mess stood a 7-year-old girl named Blair, wielding a vacuum cleaner modified with duct tape and a hairdryer. "Dad, I told you, physics betrayed me," she declared. Lewis sighed. "Blair, honey, physics doesn't betray people. You just hooked the vacuum up in reverse." Kelly stood frozen, clutching her leather briefcase containing the contract that would destroy this man's heritage. Her plan was simple: walk in, intimidate him, get the signature, and leave. Nowhere in that plan did it mention a pint-sized mad scientist in a popcorn blizzard. Lewis finally looked at Kelly, his eyes red with exhaustion. For a heartbeat, she was sure he'd recognize her as the furious woman from the French Quarter. But his eyes remained kind. He looked relieved. "I'm so glad you're here. The agency said they'd send someone today, but I thought they'd given up on me." Kelly opened her mouth to correct him, to tell him she was the CEO of Fox Incorporations, and then she stopped. A terrible, brilliant, and completely unethical idea began to take shape. "The last intern quit after one day," Lewis continued, brushing popcorn off his shoulder. "She said she wasn't prepared for gifted children." Blair adjusted her safety goggles and chimed in, "I only asked her opinion on black holes." She started crying. Seeing her opening, Kelly forced a smile. "Do you need help with the cleanup?" Lewis looked at her like she was an angel. "You're a lifesaver. Blair, this is the new intern. What was your name again?" "Kelly," she replied. "Blair, say hi to Kelly." The girl analyzed Kelly with an intensity that would make a boardroom director sweat. "You wear high heels," Blair noted. "That's ergonomically problematic." Kelly looked at her 4-inch stilettos. She had faced down ruthless lawyers and hostile takeovers, but as Lewis handed her a broom and welcomed her to the Dawson family, she realized she was in way over her head. An hour later, Kelly had swept popcorn out of places she didn't know existed, behind the fridge, inside the piano, and even out of the goldfish bowl. "Will the fish be okay?" she asked, watching Bubbles navigate through floating kernels. "Bubbles has survived worse," Blair replied. "Last semester, he was part of an unintentional experiment regarding the effects of caffeine on marine life." Lewis walked in, finally clean, carrying 3 glasses of lemonade. "Hydration break. House rule." Kelly took the glass, her heart heavy with the weight of her secret. She was sitting in the home of the man she was supposed to ruin, drinking his lemonade and bonding with his brilliant, eccentric daughter. "So, Kelly," Lewis said, sitting down beside her, "what made you want to get into social work?" The question caught her off guard. For the first time in years, the woman who had an answer for everything was completely speechless. Kelly sat frozen as Blair, who appeared silently beside her like a little analytical ghost, narrowed her eyes. "You hesitated," the girl whispered. "I didn't hesitate," Kelly snapped. "Yes, you did. 0.8 seconds. I timed it mentally. Lewis let out a genuine laugh, a sound that sent a strange, fluttering sensation straight to Kelly's stomach. Sorry about that, he said, eyes crinkling. She times everything. It's a habit. A scientific habit, Dad, Blair corrected. Hobbies are for people without intellectual purpose. Kelly looked at this brilliant, odd girl and then at this exhausted, kind man, and felt a cold wave of something she hadn't felt in years. Guilt. She shoved it down. She was there for a reason. The contract was in her bag. The signature was all that mattered. So, she said, trying to sound casual, have you lived here long? Lewis smiled, looking around the messy house with genuine affection. 3 generations. My grandfather built every inch of this place with his own hands. Kelly's stomach did a slow flip. That's special. It's why I'll never sell it, Lewis said firmly. No matter how much money they offer. Blair nodded solemnly. We have roots like trees, just without the photosynthesis. Kelly forced another smile as the weight of her deception grew heavier. What kind of mess had she walked into? Fast forward 20 minutes, Lewis had gone to grab supplies, leaving Kelly officially in charge of Blair and lunch. In theory, it seemed simple. In practice, the kitchen was on the verge of a meltdown. Kelly stood there in a chicken print apron, holding a spatula like a foreign object. The pasta isn't supposed to look like that, she muttered as the pot bubbled threateningly. Blair appeared at her side, as calm as a surgeon. You put the pasta in before the water boiled. Now you have a sticky paste that will require a chisel to remove. I can fix this. Kelly insisted. No, you can't, Blair countered. Being a functional adult doesn't make you competent in the kitchen. One requires surviving the world. The other requires a basic understanding of thermodynamics. You clearly only have the first. Before Kelly could protest, a loud hiss erupted from the stove. The skillet next to them began to billow black smoke. What is that? That's the sauce you forgot about 7 minutes ago, Blair said. I timed it. Kelly stared at the charred remains in the pan. Why is it black? Because you left the heat too high. The reaction passed the point of no return, and now you have pure carbon. Only eat that if you want something toxic. Lewis walked through the back door and stopped dead. He looked at the ruined pans, then at Kelly, then at Blair. What happened here? The intern tried to cook, Blair reported. It was a fascinating experiment on the limits of culinary incompetence. Kelly went on the defensive. I was trying to help. Lewis didn't mock her. Instead, he laughed, a light, almost enchanted sound. Kelly, you are the worst cook I've ever met. There's something charming about your total lack of domestic skills. Most people pretend to be good at everything. You clearly don't even try. I'm ordering Chinese, Lewis said, picking up the phone. And then, I need your help. I need an extra pair of hands at the cart today. You know how to push, don't you, City Princess? City Princess. Kelly bristled. That's your new nickname, Lewis winked. It fits. Blair agreed. It's accurate. You have the posture of someone who has never pushed anything heavy in her life. Kelly wanted to argue, but she realized it was true. When was the last time she pushed anything that wasn't an elevator button? An hour later, Kelly discovered that pushing a popcorn cart through the humid streets of New Orleans was significantly harder than managing a boardroom. You're pushing crooked, Lewis noted. I am pushing straight. Kelly barked. If you were pushing straight, we wouldn't be heading for that trash can. Just as she corrected her path, her heart stopped. A black limousine with the Fox Incorporation's logo was gliding down Bourbon Street. I need to tie my shoe. Kelly yelled, ducking behind the cart to hide her face as the limo crawled past. Your shoes don't have laces, Blair observed dryly. They're high heels. Then I need to adjust my heel. Kelly stayed down until the car was gone, her heart racing. When she stood up, Louis was watching her with deep curiosity. "Are you okay? You just hid behind a popcorn cart like you were running from the law." "I wasn't hiding," Kelly lied, her voice shaking. "I was checking the undercarriage. That's where the important parts are." Louis shook his head, clearly unconvinced, but he let it go as they reached Jackson Square. He began to set up the kernels, then looked at her seriously. "Can I ask you something?" The question Louis was about to ask was cut short by the screech of tires. Two black SUVs pulled up to Jackson Square, and a group of suit-clad lawyers stepped out. Kelly's heart plummeted. They weren't supposed to be here until Monday. "Miss Fox," one of the lawyers called out, holding a stack of papers. "We've been looking for you. The board is demanding to know why the acquisition of this lot hasn't been finalized." The silence that followed was deafening. Louis looked at the lawyers, then at the city princess standing behind his popcorn cart. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp realization. "Miss Fox," he whispered, the name tasting like poison. "You're the CEO of Fox Incorporations? You're the one trying to take my home." Kelly reached out, her hand trembling. "Louis, I can explain." But Blair stepped in front of her father, her analytical eyes now filled with tears. "I timed it, Kelly. You lied to us for 48 hours. That's 172,800 seconds of pure deception. My calculations, they were wrong about you." Louis didn't say a word. He just turned his back, gripped his popcorn cart, and walked away into the New Orleans mist, leaving Kelly alone in her designer heels, surrounded by lawyers and the bitter smell of burnt sugar. For the first time in her life, the corner office felt like a cage. Kelly sat at her mahogany desk, looking at the contract. If she signed it, the city would force Louis out through eminent domain. She would win. The skyscraper would rise. But as she looked at an old faded photo from a summer in the Carolinas, a photo of a young boy with a popcorn bag and a girl who promised to change the world, she realized she was about to destroy the only thing that actually made her feel alive. The next morning, the Fox Incorporation's board of directors gathered for the final vote. Kelly walked in, but she wasn't wearing a suit. She was wearing the blazer Louis had ruined with caramel, now cleaned, but symbolic. "I'm not signing the acquisition," she announced. The room erupted in chaos. "Instead," she continued, her voice steady and powerful, "Fox Incorporations is launching a new project, the Dawson Heritage Center. We aren't building a skyscraper. We're restoring the French Quarter's history, and the centerpiece will be a permanent, protected location for this city's most famous family-run business." Kelly drove back to the house with the squeaky porch swing. She didn't knock, she just sat on the steps and waited. Eventually, the door opened. Louis stood there, looking at her with a mix of exhaustion and something else. Hope. "I'm not an intern," Kelly said softly. "And I'm not a social worker. I'm just a girl who got lost in a boardroom and forgot about a boy in the Carolinas who told her that history matters more than heights." Louis sat down beside her, the smell of fresh popcorn clinging to his clothes. "You remembered," he murmured. "I never forgot," Kelly replied. "I just had to collide with a popcorn cart to see clearly again." From inside the house, Blair's voice drifted out. "Dad, tell the millionaire that her presence is statistically improved when she isn't carrying a briefcase. Also, I've adjusted the vacuum. We're ready for the next experiment." Louis laughed, that same melodic sound that had sparked Kelly's heart years ago. He reached out and took her hand. "So, city princess, think you can handle a life that involves a little more butter and a lot less business?" Kelly leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the Louisiana sun set over the river. "As long as I don't have to cook the pasta," she whispered. The CEO was gone, the popcorn vendor had found his partner, and the first love that the world tried to erase had finally found its way home.